resurgence of COVID cases that are actually linked to travelers inbound coming from India. So ayun, nagkaroon kami ng spike recently. So medyo aligaga ang Singapore government because yung daily cases actually very alarming as compared to before na parang ilang days, months din kaming walang COVID. Pero ngayon, ang dami na ulit. So, ayun, that's the reason why we are in a month-long lockdown. So, lahat din kailangan mag-work sa bahay. So, we are in a work from home setup. Yun. And did you know, just a trivia, that Singapore actually finds companies who doesn't comply with the work from home setup. So as of today, according to the news, there were 6 companies that were fined because they didn't comply with the work from home setup. So ganun sila ka-strict dito sa Singapore. Okay? So hopefully, hindi kami mahawa ng bagong variant. Kasi yung variant ngayon is actually the India variant, the B16, 17. So mabilis siya makahawa. Kaya medyo aloof din kami ni Jean sa crowd. We actually avoid going with crowds kasi nga, you don't know what's gonna happen next, diba? But anyway, we're totally safe here and we're glad na manageable pa rin ang buhay dito sa Singapore despite of being in a pandemic. Ayun. So, kayo dyan, anong chika nyo guys? Kamusta sa Pinas? How's everything? How's life? Brent? Si Brent to, tahimik ko.
Wait, Brent is here? Yeah.
Yeah,
Brent is
self-isolated. So Brent ha? Ba't ka nagsa-self-isolate? Pero sobrang miss na namin ng Pinas. Kaya nga kami nag-check-in dito sa Changi Cove kasi I felt like we've been like, alam mo niyo yun, work lang. So sabi ko kay Jean, na-miss ko na mag-Baguio, Tagaytay. Sabi ko, punta nga tayo sa nature part ng Singapore kasi nga, we want to try to experience away from the hustle and bustle of the city kasi nga yung lugar din namin condo puro, well, technically speaking, nasa Geylang kami. Alam niyo naman yung Geylang if you have to Singapore. So sobrang crowded at parang yung mga tao, they never sleep. So ayun, medyo nature kami ngayon. Nature trip kami ngayon. So after nitong meetup, mamaya gagala kami sa place. Ano yan, Brent? Why are you having bad caffeine anxiety crash? Lockdown in an oven, mainit. Dito din mainit, no? Sobra, no? Kaya nga kami nag-hotel eh. Kasi sobrang init din kahit naka-aircon kami sa condo eh. Gra, kamusta ka na? Are you still in Pampanga?
Yeah. Parang
pero you joined a new company na, no?
Yeah.
Uy, pare-pareho tayo. Si Johnny din, ha? He's not connected with freelancer anymore.
Oh.
Yes, that's a new chika.
Ako Johnny din, care to share.
Five more minutes while waiting for others to join. Hopefully, some more would be joining. Ako din pala, I'm officially resigning from Standard Chartered na today. Just today. New joiners. Sige. Let us introduce pala, Rad, yung mga new joiners. Kasi kami dito magkakakilala na. We know each other. Rad, Johnny, Brent, Gra, are actually, and Paolo. Hi, Paolo. Kamusta? Si Paolo nandito sa SG, ha? Since last year, ha? Social. Dito na siya nag-work. So, we actually know each other. So, let's call for people who are new joiners, like Clint. And maybe you can turn on your video so people can also get to know you with your facial,
Go, Clint.
Hi, Clint. Arvin, late na naman.
Oh, no!
Arvin, late ka na naman.
Sige, Clint.
Hi, Clint. Can you hear us?
Clint,
Papa,
show your video so we could see your...
Ayan, yan,
Oo
yun
nga.
na.
Hi.
Nice.
Oh,
New haircut.
Clint. Mukhang galing ka lang sa gym, ah. Kaka-gym mo lang ba?
New company, new look.
Oh, kilala niyo si Clint.
Yes, you know, Clint.
Okay, cool. Hi, Clint. Anong company ka?
Currently, I'm still connected with Multisys here in the Philippines.
Multisys. Sa Pinas.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, welcome, Clint. Si
Thank
ano
you.
naman? Si
I
Paolo.
volunteered
Paolo.
Zion. Ay, sige.
Oo, si Paolo.
Akong
Tahimik si
Paolo ba to?
Tapos
Hello.
Paolo first. Sino pa ba, Paolo? Ikaw lang naman nag-isang
Aba.
Pao dito.
Common yung name ko eh.
Sa
How are you
bagay.
guys?
Show your
Video ka
video.
Lang
naman,
ng work.
Pao.
Ay, sorry.
Tumabangan na ba sa SG?
Oo,
Ay,
lagi lang work from home eh.
Oo nga eh. Lahat naman tayo eh. Na.
Oo, kain lang ng kain, nakaupo lang.
Wow, Pao,
Walang
nakakondo ka din
exercise.
ba?
Oo.
Nice. Ano yun?
Pero,
Nasa high
tagal
floor
ko
ka?
na- Fourth floor lang. Hindi naman super high.
Okay din yan.
Oo.
Tumaba ka nga, Pao. Yung
Ako na
pisngi
lang.
mo,
Oo, kain lang ng kain eh. Hindi pa ako masyado naglalakad sa labas.
Talaga. Kami ni Jen madalas
Eh.
maglakad. Actually.
Oo, swear. Buti pa kayo.
Gala kami.
Sunog ka pag lumabas ka eh.
Sobrang init
Oo.
nga raw.
Yun nga. Sa gabi kami lumalabas.
Oo.
Kasi syempre, sobrang init nga. Sige. Thanks, Paolo. Sino naman? Si Melissa.
Si Zai.
Hi, Melissa.
Melissa.
Or Zion. Sino ba?
Si Sai.
Who wanna go
Zion.
first? Sige, si Zion. Paano kilala mo rin si Zion, Rad?
Who's that?
Yes.
Oh.
Ikot kami eh.
Kaya pala. Hi, Zion. Can you turn on your video?
Sure. Ayan. Hello.
This is the first time. Hi, mukhang kaka-gym mo lang din.
Bagong
Pero kay
bukit din.
Clint.
Nagluluto ako actually.
Mainit kasi, I understand. Same here. Welcome, Zion, to the Agile PH meetup. Next. Sino naman, Rad? Si Melissa.
Wait, I'm checking the... Si Melissa na lang yata yung hindi natin.
Oo. Hi, Melissa. Welcome to the Agile Leaders PH meetup. This is your first time to join us, right?
Yes.
Can you turn on your video para makita ka naman namin?
Okay.
Para makilala ka namin. Yeah. Hi! Kamusta? Mukhang nasa bahay ka din, ha?
Bahay. Work from home.
Oo nga eh. Pero ako, alam niyo dito, may iba dito, nung hindi pa lockdown, nagjo-join sila sa meeting habang nagja-jogging, nasa treadmill, yung mga social. Alam niyo yun? Tayo lang yung mga typical na nasa bahay setup. Welcome to the Agile PH Leaders meetup. This is our first actually meetup, online meetup kasi busy eh, no? So, si Rad actually yung nag-prompt sa akin na, hey Aucyn, let's do our meetup naman for the Agile Leaders PH Chapter. Kasi nga, we've been dormant na rin for quite a while. So, I guess we can start, Rad. It's 7:15. Thank you,
Yes.
Melissa. Welcome.
Thank you.
So I see like new joiners also. So si Arvin, hindi ko
Sino
kilala
pa?
to eh. Tsaka si
Hindi mo kilala si Arvin? Okay.
si joke lang.
Arvin, pakilala ka daw.
Hi,
Sa
sorry,
treadmill yan.
rooftop ako at the moment and it's quite dark here kasi I don't have a signal apartment ko.
Social rooftop. Welcome, Arvin. Arvin, sa Sun Life ka pa rin ba?
Yes,
So-
currently I'm doing portfolio management for digital and marketing and client experience.
Mm, I see. I see. Cool. Thanks,
Yes.
Arvin, for joining. Okay, let's have the last new joiner. Nagsalita na si Grano. Sino pa ba?
Si Jan.
Si John Pabellon. Nice name. Hi, John.
Ay, sorry,
Are you
nakamute
there?
ako. Hello. Good evening.
Yeah, can you turn on your video for your quick para makita ka na.
Hindi pwede. Hindi ako ready. Wala akong makeup.
Oh, okay.
Hindi, joke.
Sige, next time ha.
Next time na lang.
Anong company ka, John?
Sa startup.
Mm,
A new startup. So I'm looking forward to this new.
I see. Cool. Welcome, John. All right, probably, Rad, we can start na.
Yeah, we could
Sige,
start for 2 minutes. Yes. Go ahead, Aucyn. Do the
Sige,
intro.
I'll introduce you muna. Wala ka kasing camera, di ba?
Yes, both
Kaloka ka.
laptops.
Okay. Good evening, guys, and thank you for joining our first virtual meetup for the Agile Leaders PH Chapter. As I have mentioned, we've been kind of dormant for a year or so, but this meetup actually was founded in November 2018 when we are still able to travel to Manila during that time. No? So I'm in Singapore. Together with me is my husband, Jean. We both thought of creating this meetup, even if there's already an agile meetup that Ilden has been leading for quite a while. It's because it's good to have multiple avenues for meetups. So, ayun. But technically, dito kasi, in the Agile Leaders PH chapter, my intention is to actually be agnostic to agile frameworks. So I believe yung agile meetup talaga sa Pinas is highly promoting Scrum and some kind of frameworks. Pero dito kasi sa Agile Leaders, we're not specifically promoting any agile framework. So it's agnostic. It's an open discussion to any kind of framework that you would like to discuss or have a conversation with specific people. So again, welcome to Rad. Hindi ako sanay ng Raymond. So si Rad actually has been one of our active speakers for quite a while in this meetup. He's been with IBM for 9 years and 4 months to be precise. I check your LinkedIn, Rad.
Wow.
So he's been an agile coach just like me and Arvin. So marami dito actually in this meetup are agile coaches. By the way, a quick introduction of myself. I'm an agile coach in Standard Chartered Bank right now, pero paalis na rin ako ng SCB. Officially today, magre-resign na ako. But I'm moving to a local telco company. That's why it's a good journey, to be honest, to be working in a bank, especially with SCB. It's been a pleasure working with them, and I've learned a lot in just a very short span of time. To be honest, hindi ako ganun katagal with SCB. But for tonight's meetup, we're going to focus on one of the most pressed question, I believe, especially being discussed among agile coaches, even myself, because there's always a gap, inevitable reality na there's always a gap between the leadership and the teams, development teams. So we have Brad tonight to discuss on few tips and advices he could give us on how do we bridge that gap, given that we are utilizing the agile mindset and ways of working. So let's give Brad a quick round of applause for the boost, and hope you would be able to answer, Rad, all of our questions for tonight. Okay?
Thank you for the introduction, Aucyn.
Yes. Go ahead, Rad. Over to you, Rad.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm not sure if lahat tayo nasa Pinas so I just want to cover all bases muna. So we used to do talks with international community, so medyo maganda rin that we have exposure with the online meetups as compared to the traditional-ish uh, face-to-face meetups. No? That's why, uh, just to share, parang sa Agile Philippines before we had attendees from California as well as San Francisco nung last meetup. So I don't see kung sino na yung mga new joiners. So just in case. Okay, so quick introduction also. So as Aucyn mentioned, I've been with IBM. So I recently got promoted last year as the software demand leader for engage support for quote to cash, so under its operations. But I'm still doing my role as enterprise level na agile coach, and also got recognized as one of the agile thought leaders globally. So wala pa kami 100 so far in IBM, which is a good privilege and quite an achievement also, and also a certified professional, again, agnostic lead. We don't just follow Scrum, we follow multiple disciplines. So that way we know that what we deliver to our clients is the value that we deserve. So before we start, some of you who had attended the meetups before know that we like to interact with people. I'm not sure, Johnny, if we're going to use the Slido for this one or if we could just use the chat room. But either way, we could have like a minute for the participants right now or the attendees right now to describe or share the gaps within your current organization. So in 1 to 2 words, could be positive, it could be negative. It's a safe space. So please feel free to share if any. We're not forcing you to share, pero it would be great if we get your insights also.
So do we have the Slido link? I can share the link here. Wait. I'm gonna change the question. What's your question, Rad? Transfer ko dito
So,
sa ano.
So kahit sa chat na
There
lang.
we go. Yeah. I think
just to make
it's
it
already
easier for
there.
everyone. Yep. So in
Yep.
1 to 2 words, how would you describe the gaps within your current organization? So yung mga maraming hugot yan, sila Sai, sila Clint, sila Gra. Nag-name drop na lang ako. So share it. Let's say if you're going to describe current, not the previous organization.
Do they have the Slido link?
No, even sa chat na lang.
Sa chat na lang. Sige.
So that it's easier for everyone.
Yung current daw.
So maybe with you, Aucyn,
Okay.
you can start. Yeah.
Yeah. I can see it now. Thank you, Johnny. So guys, you can head over to the link that Johnny pasted in the chat box. And it's better to type in there para mas padaling makolate ni Rad yung sagot natin.
So I'm seeing like 3 people in Slido right now. But for those who are having trouble, let's say with their connections, or maybe those on their mobile that cannot log into Slido, feel free to share this in chat as we go along. Because reason I ask is I want to know if these gaps are going to be covered as well in the discussion. Because again, as Aucyn mentioned, a lot of the attendees are Scrum Masters, coaches, change enablers, diba? People who are very into agility and those who are willing to make changes in line with Agile. So it's understandable that there are gaps. There's no one perfect organization. So I wanted to capture at least a good amount of information if ever, no, if we could cover that or not, or at least I could get back to everyone. But then again, since nasa Slido naman, people could just leave it as they want to, or as their connections would allow them. Okay, so I wanted to start with a quote. I had a brief discussion with a mentor at work with regard to Agile history or the Agile Manifesto. So the type of situation goes on everything. So they impose irrational demands through the imposition of corporate power structures. This isn't merely a software development problem. It runs throughout Dilbert's organization. So I'm not sure if everyone knows Dilbert. So before Comic Agile, there's this running publication that's called Dilbert. So it shows our age too, for those who could relate. So it shows the way organizations are. So from way back up to now, and a lot of the comics covered yung mga recent years, no, mga 5 to 8 years, covered a lot on the agile topics, which I found funny. Then when I got back to checking yung Agile Manifesto, I was surprised that the Agile Manifesto did mention this, and the people, the key founders of agility, did encounter the same situation. So a good example, I'm not sure what date I got this from. I think this was 2012-ish. So it's a comic strip that the manager says that we're moving to an agile methodology for software development. But one of you has to be designated as a scrum bag. So this was during the time now when you are a project manager, and John Okoro is not here, pero I'm gonna quote John. There was a time project managers were forced to become Scrum Masters. And this was during the initial iteration of Scrum. So this was almost a decade ago. And mock approach yung one of you has to be designated as a Scrum Master. Does that sound right? I think it's better than I expected. So it's rather funny that the problems that we are encountering right now are problems that had been in organizations for like the last 10, 15 years. No? And these organizational gaps, I identified these into like 5 levels of gaps. I use the iceberg approach. It's easily relatable. Normally, from a Scrum Master perspective or from a development perspective, an Agile coach's perspective, what we always see are the top 3 gaps: the performance gap, the systems gap, and the communications gap. But what we don't know, or what we don't often see, is there are planning gaps and also strategic gaps. You know? So what we do see here to the 5 gaps, it's more mechanistic as compared to agile, which is more humanistic in nature. So the concept of valuing people over process, as we know sa values and principles of agile, it goes beyond how we manage the work to be done. It also impacts the way we organize and motivate our team members as leaders, and also how well we assume our role. So whether you're a manager, a scrum master, servant leader, or true leader, whatever you call yourself. And in order to be effective leaders, we need to first discover and then understand, what are these gaps that are impeding the progress within the organization and how we could address them accordingly. So I'm going to start from the very bottom and then work my way through the top. So starting with the strategic gap. Okay, so strategic gaps, as we know, with many agile projects, the unprecedented nature of work means that we frequently discover roadblocks and encounter a high rate of change. This is very, very, very common. No? So a strategy gap comes about when there is a non-existent, unclear, or inconsistent foundational strategy. So your foundational strategy shows what game you're playing and what winning looks like. So a lot of the discussions that I had, both sa mga kilalang mga people from the Agile community as well as those that are new to the Agile community, they have the same situation or the same dilemma. No, the strategy is unclear. Are we doing Scrum? Are we doing Safe? Are we following XP? Are we doing Kanban now? Are we doing Six Sigma? So ang daming nangyayari, but it's unclear what's happening, what's the direction, what's the strategy. And people expect them, or people expect those who lead them to understand where they are going. Leaders should be able to paint the picture for the team so that everyone understands where they are ultimately aiming for. So this is a very good quote from the principles. Now, at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. So making sure that the team knows what success and failure looks like by having a vision of what the goal is key. You know, if I'm like, let's say, the CIO, CEO, management, either higher or middle management, I need to be able to bridge the gap. You know, I need to be able to check with the team. I need to be able to talk with them. I need to be able to understand them and see what do we need to address? What do we need to adjust? What do we need to improve? No? A lot of things oftentimes top down. Eh. Hindi siya collaborative. Eh. It's gonna be the manager says so we're gonna follow this. The Scrum Master won't have anything, doesn't have any power now because the manager says so. And it defeats the purpose of a certain framework. So this quote highly reflects the situation a lot of us, a majority of us are experiencing. So having a more effective approach requires communication, constant reflection, and constant adjustment. Kind of like when you're heading down in the weeds. No? It's good to know where we are trying to get to, so that way we can navigate through the right course. Otherwise, we'll get lost, and that's the end of it. No? So next step, as we are seeing, is the planning gap. So the planning gap, it ensues when there's a strategy without a plan of action. So ibig sabihin, having a well-articulated strategy is insufficient to drive great results in your team, simply because that strategy needs to be converted into a plan of action. So in the comic strip dito sa presentation, it shows that there is the company vision and a supposed business plan. Pero with this, there is no such thing as a decent plan if the team doesn't know how to do it or what to do with it. It's even. No? So becoming a responsive organization, again, this is based on the Open Leadership Network, Open Business Agility. Becoming a responsive organization is possible when decision making is decentralized. So real transformation is possible if and when decision rights are distributed in service to improving flows of value. So what does this mean? If I'm the management, I would give you the strategy overall. No? Pero the business has a strategy. And these are reflected in the team's backlog priorities created by, let's say, your product owner in collaboration with the team. It's going to be reflected in your board for the team to understand which direction they would be heading. So it's not going to be, I'm the manager, this is our strategy, and this is the plan that we should execute. Having a decentralized approach in decision making, empowering your teams, understanding and trusting that your teams know how to do it best is the best approach to close the gap as much as possible. Because if you don't trust your teams, and if it's going to be just a top-down approach, real transformation won't happen. You're just taking orders. I liken this to, I'm not sure if we have Catholics in the call, but there was the sermon by Jerry Orbos before now that mentioned what is the difference between a missionary and a mercenary. No, a missionary knows his or her mission, Pero a mercenary only does what job was told to be done. No? So if you're a scrum master, you're an agile coach, you're a product owner, you're a developer, what are you? Are you a missionary? Do you know the agile values and principles and have it as your mission? Or are you just a mercenary? This is the strategy, this is the plan, this is what we're just gonna do because it's our job. Code monkeys, code developer, you know. And a lot of talks that I have with several groups, mentoring sessions, coaching sessions, this comes out a lot. There is a strategy, there is a plan. Sometimes the plan is unclear, sometimes the plan is spoon fed. There's no real transformation happening. And then at the very end, you're just a puppet, you're just following orders, and it's not going to end up well. No. So before we go through the third topic, which is communications, I'm not sure again if we're going to use Slido or for the sake of convenience, we could use the chat. On a scale of 1 to 3, currently, how would you rate your workplace communication? So if you are a team member or a developer, or if you are a scrum master in service of your team, if you're an agile coach in service of your organization, if you're a manager in service of your downlines, how would you rate the workplace communication? So maraming hugot tayo dyan from the bottom. No? Pero from those in the management position, how would you scale or how would you rate the communications in your workplace? So not sure, Austin, if you have anything to share now at this point with regard to the communication, or if you like to share a story with your recent tenureship with Standard Chartered.
Regarding communication?
Because you mentioned that you were there, no, for X
I'm
number of
still
months.
there, actually.
You're still there, pero you're gonna be
I'm leaving
resigning
then
today,
probably
no?
naman.
So is this a problem with like the communication? Like, was there like a misunderstanding that prompted you to go away, or?
To be honest, guys, the communication level in Standard Chartered Bank, I rated it 3 because
Okay.
people are actually empowered to talk, to speak up their minds. But I still observe that with regards to their job, even if they are being encouraged to be vocal and to collaborate and speak up anything that they would want to, some people just don't give a damn about their going extra mile. So I think that's why I posted the question, Rad, just now. If you are a mercenary, I believe, just like what you mentioned, if you're a developer, you're a scrum master, you're an agile coach, you are just focused on doing what your job is being told or what you're supposed to do. Why
Correct.
would you want to become a missionary? So why would you want to shift from being a mercenary to missionary? What's in it for you? Alam mo yon. So yun yung question ko ngayon for this meetup. But with regards to the communication level, I think it's not enough for having an organization to encourage the people just to be vocal and speak up if they don't really see the value of their role. Diba? People would just, okay, I can speak up, I can tell that I disagree with this and that, but if I don't see my value to go extra mile, I wouldn't just don't care. I wouldn't just care. I would just focus on my day-to-day job. Alam mo yon. So yun yung experience ko with Standard Chartered Bank. Kasi nga, people are still being in this kind of container setting that I would just care about my job. I don't care about the others because I'm just being paid to develop, to deliver.
To do my work, no?
Yes.
And a lot of
So
people, I
yun
think,
yung
could relate to what you just said. No? But I remembered a lot of the past conversations that I had recently it kind of reflects at least the tone of what you just said in some conversations that we had, and it's both scary and funny at the same time, because a lot of us, regardless of where we are, you're in Singapore, we're here in the Philippines, we are
Regardless.
experiencing the same things, no? Regardless of the culture, regardless of the people handling, regardless of the company. There's always one constant thing that's sticking out like a sore thumb, so to speak. So it's both scary
Right.
and funny. Thank you, Aucyn, for sharing that.
Welcome.
So for the communication gap, and thank you again also for those who participated in the chat now and Slido if ever. The communication gap again, it arises when there's a strategy and a plan. Pero they aren't being communicated broadly and consistently. So this kind of reflects on the previous topics with strategy and planning. So the people with the strategy and the plan don't know how to parse yung higher up strategy, so to speak, and plan into something that people doing the work can understand and find relevant and compelling. So, say for example, I'm Scrum Master from a company in Makati. Uy, baka may tamaan dito sa participants. Na we know the strategy and the plan, no? Pero we don't understand why we're doing this. Uh, so this is what was given to us. Pero could you share a bit more? Could you elaborate maybe? Because what we know is what you gave to us, pero we cannot do anything in our own accord. We cannot use our own style, or we cannot make discarte simply because we don't know what it is. No, it's too vague. The management cannot parse it enough, cannot uh, hindi niya mahimay masyado for the people to understand what's happening. So I have like 5 developers here. So what's the plan? No? What's the strategy? What's happening? So the 5 developers are doing the work in the backlog. So we're gonna deliver this in like 6 months, or say in the next 3 sprints. But what is the overall vision? What is the overall strategy? What's the overall plan? What is happening at this time? So the communication is top down, or it's not being communicated well. No, um, I like reading on one of the founders ng Agile Manifesto, which is Alistair Cockburn. So he mentioned one key article there in regards to osmotic communication. So osmotic communication, so major scientific no osmosis. So si Alistair Cockburn, he likens it to an energy field. So imagine a light bulb that radiates energy or light from the people. So if you're too far away, you won't receive its benefits. If you're too far away, I can't see the light too clearly. Yes, there's a light, pero parang light at the end of the tunnel. It's too far away. I can't discern what's being shined upon. Pero if I get in close proximity, or if there are no barriers, I would get the full benefits. I would see, oh, okay, it's a room, it's a hallway, it's a huge avenue that's being lightened upon, and I understand what's happening in the four walls of the offices. So that's the communication that we need. No? We need um, the understanding based on how people communicate to us and how we communicate back. So it's a two-way approach. Collaborative communication is the key. Kaya nga osmosis, yung term na ginamit ni Alistair Cockburn. Um, a lot of the recent discussions also, I'm not gonna name drop people, pero some of them are attending right now. Strategic plans are often the key topic. So some of them shared that they have certain margins as a goal for them to hit. So that makes sense maybe to the founders or the executives running the business. So if you're a startup in Makati, or you're a startup in BGC, or somewhere in between. But those goals are just numbers to people who haven't been taught about margins, or even about what causes the margins to rise and fall. So say for example, I'm gonna follow the velocity. So yung velocity natin dapat ganito, ganito, ganito. Pero I don't know how it affects how my work affects the velocity. And if it does, how does it affect the whole business? So I don't have the visibility, I don't have the understanding, I don't have the avenue to talk to you, Mr. or Miss Manager, about what's happening and how I could help, right? Even though I'm a developer, I'm not just a developer, like I'm part of the company. So at this communication stage, the leaders of the team, so this falls upon the middle managers, higher managers, scrum masters, agile coaches, perhaps, they need to either educate the team about what the margins are and what causes them to rise and fall, or probably translate that goal into something that their team can actually understand and affect. So merong certain scenario na si AC. Ang ganda na sinasabi eh, no? So metrics this, metrics that. Pero when asked to elaborate, mas jargon yung binibigay. Up to the point na tinamad na lang si Scrum Master to listen. And he said na, I'm just gonna move out because I don't understand what's happening here. I probably be better off where I'm needed and where I could be most valuable. And this is not something na may mali sa payroll or they don't understand a lot of things. It's more on the communication lang. And this is a uh, high risk talaga na item that the managers or maybe those in the teams also need to identify and address as soon as possible kasi this is where either the mystery or the magic happens. The middle gap, the communication gap. It's a make or break piece of the work in your organization. So next up, we do have, so I shared the quote also in the Agile Manifesto. No? So the business people and the developers must work together, not necessarily maybe daily, but maybe we could say regularly throughout the project. And also the most efficient and effective method of conveying information to and within a development team is face-to-face conversation. Again, since pandemic, we're not co-located, medyo mahirap, but at the end of the day, technology bridged that gap. So how we use technology as well, whether it's Zoom, Slack, WebEx, I don't know what else, Teams. I'm not sure if people are still using Teams or Google Hangouts. No, so a lot of these are aimed to bridge the gap. So at least we'll still be able to work as efficiently as possible before the pandemic or pre-pandemic. So next up would be the planning gap, or rather the systems gap. So the systems gap exists. Ito favorite ko to. Is when the strategy, the plan, and the communications are in place. But people have to, I love this term, fight against the business systems. Grabe yung term, no? You have to fight against the system. So the processes, the procedures, and the tools. Kung ako si Scrum Master, and I've been with the company for like a month or two, and I call out na, hey, this isn't right. Would the existing gaps be there? And would the existing gaps be bridged properly? Could I do that? Is there a communication gap for me to tell that to my manager? Or let's say if I'm the product delivery lead, hey, medyo mahirap kausap yung vendors kasi it's not agile. They're writing user stories for the sake of user stories. Pero when I read this is not a user story. I don't see anything remotely resembling a user story, not even a job to be done. No? And you're expecting us to work properly? Ang hirap. No? You're fighting an existing system. Even though that system that the management thinks is laid out for you now. The process is there, the procedures are there, the tools are there. It's hard, kasi you're fighting something that you know yourself is either wrong, incorrect, or let's say out of balance, for a lack of a better term. Pero you don't have the capacity or you're not being allowed to address that simply because the management is part of the systems gap. No? So in the open leadership approach in terms of open business agility. Also sa beyond budgeting, no, sa beta codex. This was often mentioned. Now, within well-defined boundaries, people are happiest and do their best work when they are making decisions within a well-understood and durable set of constraints. Self-organization works best when people have a clear goal and a not too confining set of guardrails to work on. So you're not given free reign. Okay, you do everything that you want. You're free. This is an open space. Self-organize as you want. Para siyang ano, no? Flex agile na mas open. Pero what's required here is that people should know that the system is there to help them align to what's the right path. If we are following Scrum as a framework, Scrum as a process, Scrum as an approach, Scrum should be followed properly for us to get the values and the results and benefits that's aimed by Scrum. No, if you're using Kanban, it's the same. If you're using XP, it's the same. But if I am using, let's say, Scrum, and I'm expecting a result of less than 9.99 Six Sigma, then there's a clear gap right there. The system is not aligned with the results or what is the expectation. So understanding that there is, let's say, an existing system, or let's say, for example, if you are the team, you're trying to affect the culture, but the management is fighting you because it's not aligned with how they see it. It's a systems gap and a communications gap. No, kasi there's no osmosis, there's no collaborative communication, collaborative work, and it's gonna be hard. So it's either you're gonna burn out or you're gonna leave. No, which leads us to the last gap, which is the performance gap. So this is when teams or the individuals themselves are given everything they need. So you have the strategy, you have the plan, there's open communication, there's the system. And yet, for some reason, as a person, as a developer, as a scrum master, as a project manager, as a delivery lead, agile coach, whatever, can't seem to manage to work properly. No? So this goes to the saying. A lot of the people in the manifesto, si Uncle Bob actually, is aimed at the mushy stuff daw. If you read the history of Agile, nung last day ng Agile, they wanted to talk about what they had accomplished. No, hey, we have the Agile manifesto right here, but for some reason it's holding them back to talk about the mushy stuff. Pero Agile is all about the mushy stuff. No, mushy stuff in this case is everything that is human in the organization. So building projects around motivated individuals, give them the environment and support they need, trust them to get the job done. No? So if I were a motivated individual, my productivity level, it could vary, no? From someone who undermines, maybe a net drain to the organization, or on the flip side, I could be a critical contributor who brings passionate innovation to the organization. So it's either two, how do you call this? Two edges or two extremes. Pero you have to be in between. So having the right environment, having the right support, having the right trust, having the right communication system, as well as the understanding of the strategy and the plan, it would help you as an individual. No? So, lalo pandemic, I'm not sure if a lot of you had read Bloomberg's latest article with regard to the post-pandemic boom ng resignations. So a lot of these, when you read between the lines, it's not necessarily being burned out or because of the languishing feeling of the pandemic. It's mainly because the pandemic brought out all the gaps in the organization. No? Communication kasi biglaan kayo naging remote. The strategies are unclear kasi hindi mo alam kung would you have the businesses, the partners, the vendors that you have from before. A lot of businesses are closing. No? The plan, what's the plan? No? how we gonna go through the next 3 months. The system, is the system there as before? Are we going through like the right methods? Are we on the clear? No. So a lot of these got highlighted nung pandemic. And this goes back to the Bloomberg article about the resignation boom. Ang daming nagre-resign despite the uncertainties of having a next job. And luckily, siguro for me, personally, with IBM, I've been, as Aucyn mentioned, almost 10 years now with IBM, regardless of what had happened. Because IBM gave me the right environment, the right support. I always see everyone in my team, both my managers and my team, actively closing gaps. If there are communication gaps, uh, strategic gaps, planning gaps, system gaps. So only in the right environment would motivated individuals be able to work properly. And in doing so, you'd be able to close the gaps, those that we had mentioned, all those gaps that we have. So in closing, I'm sharing a quote from Henry Ford. I was very much interested in Henry Ford because he is considered the father of automation, in such a way na yung when he did the Ford Motors, yung mga unang kotse, they did the distribution line, or yung parang automated way of building it. Not necessarily automated, no, pero parang may system of work na eventually Toyota adapted, so on and so forth. So if everyone is moving forward together, then success takes care of itself. So if you have the right strategy, the right plan, the right communication lines, the right system, and the right motivated individuals, I think success is not something that you would be working for or working on. No? It's gonna be there as a byproduct of everything that you work for, which is a good thing. No? So and that gonna end the presentation a minute before the time that Aucyn had set. So thank you, Aucyn. Gonna close the slide and back to you.
Thank you, Rad. Just in time, I'm actually going through, there's a lot of questions, Rad. And it's a good discussion. Thank you for that well-incited discussion about different kinds of gap. Actually, let me go through the Q&A list. Let me know, Rad, if you can see the list of questions right now.
In the chat room or
it's Slido.
Slido.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, I think we have a little bit an hour to go through all these questions. We can start with the first one. It would be Rad who can first answer the question, and somebody else, if you would like to butt in, if you can contribute answers to these questions, feel free to butt in. So this is not just for Rad and for us, the host. So for the late covers, we have two hosts here, aside from the speaker, Rad. You have me, Aucyn, and Johnny, actually, who's doing the setup on the background. But anyone can probably bat in to contribute answers to these questions. What do you think, Red?
Yeah.
Okay,
that works.
Cool. Sige. Let's go first with the Larman's laws question. Are Larman's laws considered with enacting strategy? Is there anyone who would like to elaborate on this question before we focus on the answer? Who actually posted this question? Can you elaborate? Go ahead.
Hi, Rad, long time listener, first time follower.
Wow.
So Larman's laws. I can share the link with the folks here.
Yeah, Craig Larman. Yep.
Craig Larman. So the number one law that she mentioned was that organizations are implicitly optimized to avoid changing the status quo. Middle and first level managers and specialist positions and power structures, specifically being the people who would be enacting the status quo. So, what in your experience, I guess, has helped with, or what have you seen that helped to move that needle in terms of enacting strategy, given this?
So I remember Larman's law, no? This is, I'm not sure exactly when, pero parang we discussed this before last year. This always comes up to conversations also, that culture follows structure, no? This is also part of Larman's law of organizational behavior. The first law, I think, is reflective ng old structures, the old power structures that we had from before, the command and control structures, the triangular hierarchy, and talagang it was built so that the status quo, the middle, the first level, the specialist positions would stay in their respective areas, no? Pero with Agile, so not necessarily this Agile, we have a couple of movements. We got Management 3.0, we got the Beyond Budgeting, we got a lot more in between sa Benta Codex, Open Leadership Movement, so on and so forth. These are a lot of thinkings and reflections that would help move from where you are at right now, if you are in the old setup, towards a more, I'm not sure what's the right term, but a more open and a more acceptable type of environment. So I'm not sure if I've answered the question, because we're kind of reading between the lines, because we discussed this amongst ourselves also na before. Yeah, parang we're missing a lot of the details in between because we didn't like with the previous discussions.
No worries, no worries. Maybe I think that's going to be a longer discussion. But thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. And yun, yeah, how that dynamic between old versus new, and what stays behind, or what remains as a result of, oh, it's just the teams doing Agile and the rest of the organization doesn't have to squat, or oh, IT is for just the product teams, right? Or the innovation
And HR
team.
is gonna stay the same, no? Parang ganun.
Stays the same. HR stays the same. Competence stays the same. The PMO stays the same. So there's that. Thank you.
Okay.
But
Cool.
anyone wants to share also their thoughts or insights with regard to the question that Richard asked.
Yeah, maybe I can share something. Siguro ano lang. Just to empower yung old versus new. Siguro I'm not sure if it's a good or bad idea, but I think another thing that you can consider is you can make the old, let's say, status quo like look bad by just, I mean, if something is if the old status quo is not really effective, then if you're actually empowered, you may or may not do things that can make the old status quo worse, so that maybe the current organization, okay, this is getting worse every time, maybe we can start thinking of something else. So I mean I'm not being the devil's advocate, but I think that's one motivation that people are familiar with, yung if it's not working for our current application, or if it's actually giving us negative feedback or negative value or something like that. So I think that's a good motivation, pero yun nga, medyo on the negative side. But at least it can convince the organization na okay, we need to change, on the expense of probably your application failing or losing money or something like that. So yeah, that's just my take on how we might convince the organization to try out new things. So yun lang.
So the question there is, would you still be in the organization after?
Yeah, I mean that's it. That's siguro it's up to the discretion of those who are trying to transform the organization. So I mean, there's no such thing as calculated risk, but you can do things to prevent that kind of catastrophic failure. Hopefully, na wala na organization after.
So your point actually is a good one kasi I remember against Lorman's law or kay Craig Lorman na law of organizational behavior. It was mentioned before, kay John Seedon, na attempting to change an organization's culture is a fault. No, it always fails. People's behavior, which is the culture, is a product of the system. No, so the way you act is the product of the system. So if you act worse, no, it's because of the system. So it kind of reflects how the system treats you. So ikaw yung bunga sa puno ng masamang organisasyon, kumbaga. But the risk there is that you might end up losing your job or a chance at changing the culture in such a way na you wanted it to be. So medyo parang rebel approach to, no? Yung gagawin mo. You do the worst that you could do to get the attention of the higher ups. Whereas, if you go through an approach na hindi mo worst approach, no? Pero in several groups, I had mentioned this before, organizational culture or cultural change is not a folly, no? Versus to what John Seedon had mentioned before. I always say this, no, na slowly poison the water. Kahit pating pa yan, kahit balyena pa yan, if you poison the water, everything would be affected. So if you are a developer, you are a scrum master, you are a product owner against, let's say, a coven of old managers that are uh, bound to the old ways of working. No? Cultural change is the best approach to fix what you see are the simply because you cannot order them to do the right thing because they don't see it as a problem. No, you're doing agile on the ground, but people are doing traditional project management at the top, and that won't work. Even if you're gonna see it as a hybrid approach, ganun, medyo optimist guy, it won't work like you want it to be. So the best approach is to change the culture. Start with yourself. Start with your team. Other teams would copy you. Other teams would see you as a poster child of what needs to be done in order to do things properly. Up until maging scaled yung approach. If you're doing the right thing, chances are 1 out of 10 kayo, 9 other teams would follow you because they see it as the right way to go. And if 10 teams are doing this, management won't be able to do anything because it yields results. No? So I guess that ties back to Larman's law na yung culture follows structure, but rather structure follows culture in this manner.
Okay. Thank you,
Sorry, medyo
Ran.
napahaba.
Oo. Sige, guys. Because we still have 8 questions left, I'm gonna time box the succeeding questions and the Q&A for 5 minutes para ma-finish natin lahat ng questions. Okay. Thank you, Richard and Gra, for that very insightful answers. We're gonna go to the second question. Why would a mercenary want to become a missionary? Anyone?
Mag-voluntold ako si Zayo.
Zion.
Adyan ka
Wait,
pa ba?
I think Zen is just listening in. He's
Okay.
hours.
Sayang.
Oh.
Siya
Mm.
sana yung perfect scenario. So maybe we
But do you
could we
think
could we could use you, Gra, as an example. Maybe you could share your insights.
Okay, sige. Siguro, I mean, pinaka mabilis na example would be code monkeys versus actual developers that care for the product. So, I think not necessarily insight to, pero siguro experience. I'll share a bit of this. So, we have an experience wherein the developers are just mercenaries. So, they just get paid and do what they're told. But in the end, they have no idea what the value they're delivering, and they don't. At I'm not sure if they don't care or they don't know how to, or they don't even know what's the goal. So it may be either two ways. So that's very problematic at the least because uh, the team is not very effective on delivering value. At first, the management are happy about it that they're that the developers are listening to what they say, but in the end, there's no there's little to no value being delivered by the product itself. Whereas in contrast, when the developers do know actually the product goal, the sprint goal, or whatever the direction the organization is moving with. So that's where you can actually see that the developers deliver value because they understand the why. So
mm,
yeah, but then again, in my experience, those kinds of developers are very rare. I mean, even in the same organization, they're very rare. uh I'm not saying that it's their fault or it's the organization's fault. So maybe there's something there might be the communication gap that na nabanggit kanina ni Red. So
mm,
yeah, that's my take on this one. Yeah, I
mm,
mean, commenting on what Brent said on the chat. Yeah, I think both sides have to do something about it, not just uh one side.
mhm. Ako naman ang take ko dyan. People who would want to shift from being mercenary to missionary is on a personal level, being an ambitious one in a good way. If a person is ambitious enough to step up in his role, for example, and he feels empowered to do so, I think that's when the shift happens. Kasi if you are empowered, you have the ability to go extra mile, diba? From being a mercenary to missionary, and you want to step up from being, for example, being a developer, you would want to become somehow, um, if your planned span of time would to become an architect for a little over a year, for example, then you would do something extra mile para ma-achieve mo yung goal mo na maging architect ka, di ba? So, I think that's one of the factors or probable cause why people would want to become a missionary from being the ordinary doers or knowledge workers. So, yun. Okay, so 30 seconds left. Anyone else who would like to contribute to that question? If none, then we can proceed to the next question. Thank you, Gra. The next question is, how can we convince people in power, distribute, or give up some of their power to empower others? That's a nice question. It's more of a convincing. Sige, I'll restart the timer now. So anyone who would like to answer that?
Also, Aucyn, could you share your screen? Kasi,
Oh, I thought
yeah.
Johnny is able to share.
Yeah, but I think you need to pin yung
So that people would see the
screen.
question also.
Yeah.
pala, wait ha.
Yes.
Sorry naman guys. Hindi ako masyadong familiar sa Zoom. That's why. But how do I pin that? Johnny, I'll make you our host again, ha? Sorry for the trouble. I can't pin this specific slide. I don't know how. I'm
You
trying.
can hover dun sa ano. Wait. On the
I'm
participants.
trying to. Oh, there you go. Sorry. Okay. Now I just did. So can you see the second question? The third question rather. Okay. So how can we convince people in power to distribute or give up some of their power to empower others? So anyone who would like to answer that question?
So it's actually a very interesting question. Kasi parang parang sinasabi na people are in power and have the power, no? Whereas management is there to help guide. Leaders are there to help guide the people into the right path. So if your thinking is on a top-down approach, yung the old ways of working, you would see na whoever is the highest paid person, the hippo, no, his opinion matters. Kaya you give your respect. You see him as a person who is higher than you. Whereas he only plays the role, a specific role in the train of delivery, no. So no one owns the power, nor is in power. No, people are, or not necessarily just people, pero certain individuals are in specific roles in order for you to achieve a goal. So say for example, a person is uh, a person is a product owner, a person is a developer, a person is a scrum master. Misnomer palagi is the PO is your leader, the PO is your team leader, the PO is your manager. Parang the PO plays a certain role so that we could deliver value to the client, no? So we could achieve a goal. It's not necessarily a hierarchical approach in terms of power structures, but more of understanding that certain people are in certain positions so that you could deliver a certain set of value in your respective role. So there's no such thing as people in power or people giving out power, but there is such a thing as people empowering other people. If I tell Gra, hey Gra, you're doing a great job, keep it up, Gra would feel great, no? If Brent tells me na, hey, hang in there, you're doing a great job, do it as much as you can because a lot of people are looking up to you. Parang you'll feel empowered, you'll do well, no? Pero not necessarily na Brent is my manager or Gra is like one of the people in my team. People are just playing roles to deliver value. But at the end of the day, no one owns the power.
Agree. I agree on that.
Pero sa Pilipinas, no, medyo mahirap pa siyang concept. But other countries are doing the flat hierarchy. It's working well naman.
Especially kapag leaders are doing power trip, mahirap actually.
I call them managers. They're not leaders.
Oo nga eh. Ako, ang technique ko dyan, pagka I cannot resolve an issue, for example, with the product owner, ako recent, ko lang to experience with the product owner in SCB. Ang nag-raise na sa akin ng issue is the service delivery manager na. Sabi niya, Aucyn, I need your help. Our product owner, I've called his attention since last year in asking him to take the PO training. He's been with Standard Chartered Bank for 11 years. I personally talked to him and asked him about his experience being in SCB for 11 years. And then he actually gradually promoted to becoming a product owner without having enough BA experience. And that instantly gave me the understanding why he is having trouble becoming an effective PO. So I told him, what's holding you back from taking the PO training? And he has his reasons. So whatever reasons he gave me, I told him, you know what? These pressing issues coming from the team that you are part of right now wouldn't go away. I told him. Kasi he will be moving to the another team nga. Kasi yung chief PO, yun yung naisip ng chief PO na resolution for the issue of this current squad complaining about him being not an effective PO. So sabi ko dun sa chief PO, that doesn't resolve the issue. We need the PO, the incumbent PO, to take the formal PO training for him to be formally educated on his role. Kasi nga, ang background niya, waterfall. So, ayun. That actually allows him to understand na he really have to take serious education about being an effective PO for him to effectively exercise his power as well. Kasi I told him, tingnan mo nangyayari right now. The team or the squad is complaining about your role and they are questioning your position being a product owner. How do you feel about it? I asked him that question and he said, well, I'm really confused, Aucyn, right now because I thought that I just have to do the following tasks and jobs kasi hindi siya marunong maggawa ng functional requirement. So we are actually going through some sprints na wala kami user stories to groom. So nagugulat din ako. Sabi ko, bakit wala tayong user stories? So walang trabaho, walang gagawin for the new sprint. So yun nga, kasi he doesn't understand how to come up with the functional requirements and how to derive user stories from those requirements. Kasi nga, wala siyang BA experience. Kaya I told him, you really have to go through that education for you to become an effective PO. And eventually, he agreed, but hindi ko alam kung kailan siya magsisimula mag-PO training kasi ako rin yung magte-train sa kanya. Kaya lang aalis na ako, no? So, ayun. So, yun yung sagot ko sa kanya because if you want to practice and exercise your power effectively, you have to be credible. You have to be consistent. And alam mo yon, people would take your word na alam nila, susundin ka nila kasi you really know what to do being in that position. So if you don't want to be questioned how to become an effective PO, then take the formal training para alam mo rin kung ano yung gagawin mo. So yun lang yung ko doon, point of view ko doon. Okay. Thank you, Rad, for that question, for that answer. Next question. Johnny, next question, please. Thank you. Can you share the link on Osmotic Communication, please? I think I just found the link about. This is actually coined by Alistair Coburn, if I'm not mistaken.
Coburn, yep. So I have the book, no, pero I don't have an online copy, pero maybe there's somewhere na may PDF, pero I have it as an actual physical book.
Oh. So. Wala bang ano yan? What do you call this? Yung audiobook or Kindle version, Rad?
Most likely meron to, pero I'm not sure if it's free. No, it's always a question of how much it will be.
Sige. Ayun, so book pala siya. Where did you get that book, Brad?
I bought it sa Barnes & Noble before.
Sa Barnes & Noble.
Years ago.
Wait, sa US?
Yes.
Okay. Sige guys, kasi I buy stuff from US. I'll try to buy it from US and ship it here in Singapore. Kung may gusto magpasabay, let me know. I'll check and probably send to you the link kung may makita ko sa Amazon. Let me check it right now kung meron. Kasi mura lang magpa-ship dito eh. But if you happen to get interested in getting the book, ayun, sige, let me know. I can, nagpapabalik bayan box ako. Isasabay ko na lang yung book sa mga gustong bumili ng book. Okay. Next question. How do you do an org-wide communication instead of the top-down approach?
How large is your organization first? is the question, no? Is it enterprise level? Is it medium and small, di ba? It depends eh. If it's say 50 to 100 people, that's easy. You can do a town hall, no? Then do just one communication lang. Kung physical na sa isang town hall day or do a Zoom meeting. But if let's say enterprise level, say for example, sa amin sa IBM, pag may sinabi yung CEO, it's gonna be coursed through respective leaders para ma-ensure na lahat makakausap and a lot of people will understand. Tapos, ganon. Kasi it depends talaga on the size. Pero in terms of yung efficacy, no? How effective it would be understood and if the lines of communication are open. Enterprise level, at least in our experience, once it course down to the higher ups, papunta sa team level, merong parang mga areas of communication that sa amin Slack. People could comment in Slack or people could comment sa forums and try to check and understand, okay, so this is what you told us. Is my understanding correct? Or this is what you told us. This goes against what I'm trying to do. So parang ganun. So there is collaborative communication, maybe not real time kasi nga medyo malaking organization. Pero the communication lines are open to a certain extent. No? So that's what's key. It's not how big the organization is. It's about how open the lines are. So maybe what I just said might not reach yung CEO, pero the leadership on our department might understand it along the same lines as the CEO, and he or she might be able to answer the question that would help me understand it. Tapos an ongoing conversation would be there. Tapos it may be coursed through the CEO. There are instances na may parang open talk sa amin that we could freely talk with the higher management, with VPs, with the CEO, etc. etc.
Ako may ko dyan. May tip ako dyan. Sa question kasi, what kind of communication ba? Number one, anong klaseng communication? If it's a communication that would concern everyone in the organization, for example, deliverables. Example, ano yung kailangang i-deliver ng ganitong mga teams or squads? Sa SCB and dun din sa mga past clients namin, when I was with Orbium, you remember guys, I used to work with Orbium. Yes. So we worked with different clients outside Singapore. Planning. Sa SAFE, ang tawag sa kanya, PI planning. Pero if agnostic to SAFE, we call it big room planning. So it is a horizontal type of communication across the organization being done by the executives or the leaders. Pwede mo rin siya ma-consider na top-down, pero actually horizontal lang approach niya kasi with regards to, for example, the next quarter or the next year or kung ano man yung desired time boxing nila, they actually meet everyone in the same room and discuss for the next 2 days on how they go about achieving those next quarter plans. So yun yung tinatawag ng big room planning. So even the developers, everyone in the development teams are there to plan with the leaders. So even not just with the leaders, architects, lahat, as in lahat nandun kayo. So marami kaming companies na nag-try nito. So paano kapag may mga offshore, may mga outside your country pa, mga distributed teams. So pwede din actually. But the goal is to be able to effectively communicate the product vision for the next quarter in just one wave of planning. So yun yung kagandahan ng big room planning. And you can learn more about it when kahit Google niyo yan, makikita niyan, big room planning. So we can discuss in details for the next meetups to come kung how is the big room planning being set up and how can it be done effectively. And I'll tell you, sobrang laki nung change na nakita ko sa mga companies na gumagawa na ng big room planning. Kasi hindi na ito yung, ano bang gagawin? Anong sabi? What's next? What should be doing for the next sprints to come? Yung mga ganong question. So, hindi siya yung i-echo lang ng PM or Scrum Masters or ng product owners yung organization goals. So that's why I consider it as very effective. Okay. So next question. Does communication gap also affected by the number of bee watchers? Anyone who
Be
would
watching
like?
culture.
Wait, but may lumabas na B-Watcher dito.
Sino ba nag-post niyan?
Sino kaya yan?
Sino nga ba nag-post niyan?
Sino ba nag-post niyan? Umami na.
No, that was mine. That was mine. Hi, Rad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay.
Can you expound on the B-Watchers, Richard, for the benefit of...
So there's a story by Dr. Seuss about the bee watchers, and it's actually quite old story, and it's quite relevant today. I highly encourage people who are curious about the bee watching watchers and the bee watchers by Dr. Seuss.
Hotcher bee watchers.
Yes, there you go. It's on YouTube, and it's in animated form, so please take a look and see how you can relate back to it in your organizational design and structure. And so Rad, in your experience, and with the examples that we've talked about with communication gaps and addressing it, would you say that that having a number of bee watchers also starts to affect the communication gap in negative or positive ways?
So it is more of a negative, no? Kasi top down nangyayari. So a bee watcher is watching a bee watcher, diba? So the hotcher bee watcher is watching the bee watcher watching the bee watcher. So layers, no? Ang daming puro let's say imagine us together, ako, si Gra, ikaw, si Clint, si Aucyn. So there's like 5 of us. And I need to get the communication from you. And a lot of layers has to be kailangan daanan, no? And walang means for me to talk back or communicate back. Walang osmosis because I simply watched. The watcher simply watches, and the watcher watches the watcher, and the watcher watches being watched by the watcher. No, so top down. So it affects it negatively. And this is interesting. No? Thank you for sharing this. I was parang hesitant pa to include this because this was covered sa less discussions. No, but thank you. It does affect it in a negative manner. Ano yung Chinese bee whispers?
In Chinese whispers, how the communication flows through layers and layers of management.
Okay. So yun. So Gra sent the link also for the bee watcher, hotcher bee watcher.
Okay, so did Rad ba answer your question, Richard?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, cool. Next question. How effective is the osmotic communication versus the big room planning? Rad?
I'll leave that to you.
I think they are different diba? The osmotic communication, para sa akin, it's more of an echoing approach versus the big room planning. Very strategic kasi yung big room planning, I would say, and it's quite technical. So, it depends on, sabi ko nga kanina, ano ba yung i-communicate? Ano ba yung information na gusto i-communicate? So, you identify first what type of communication or information you would like to cascade down to the people, and then identify the right channels to, kasi meron din mga town hall, di ba? So that's one way to effectively communicate din yung mga organization-wide news and information. But when it comes to getting the whole squads and the tribes to get to deliver something in the next quarter, for example, then I would say you go for the big room planning. Kasi nga, very technical yung setup ng big room planning. And it actually engages everyone to be on the same room physically or virtually, and you plan with everyone. Ganun siya sineset up. So you identify first, and then you pick the strategy to communicate that information. Yan ang tip ko sa inyo, guys. So hindi pwedeng one type of communication strategy. Marami naman kasing pwedeng i-utilize para mas effectively ma-communicate yung information na yun. And always choose sino ba yung audience. Kaya importante, identify the audience, identify the kind of information you want to spread or disseminate, and then you choose the right communication strategy. Okay.
I have an additional.
Go ahead.
Now that you mentioned it, big room communication, big room plan, I remembered a concept sa Scrum at Scale, with regard to reducing naman the number of communication pathways within the organization. Kasi what happens is, the larger the organization is, the more complex yung communication that happens. So Scrum at Scale may be worth a look also. They do have an approach which is Scrum of Scrums-ish yung approach, which minimizes yung communication pathway. Also, it reduces the complexity. Also yung scalability ng communication for both ways. Osmotic for a big organization. This is good then kasi if it's gonna be like 1:1, then it's gonna go through like several B watchers. It's bound to be a disaster, or ang dami na niyang different interpretations bago pa dumating sa'yo. Versus it being scaled down or descaled approach. Linear scalability niya, so to speak. So para kang may direct line from point A to point B. So that's a good approach also.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned it's important to identify what kind of information ba and who are the audience. Kasi if you want to avoid several layers to go through before that information reaches the right audience, then kailangan strategic din yung approach mo. And of course, yung big room planning, hindi naman to talaga actually gagawin across the entire organization kung hindi sila part ng value stream, di ba? So people who are involved in the same value stream should be part of the big room planning. So kung ang target audience mo are specific people lang who has to get that information, then of course the big room planning is not the right way to do the dissemination. So it depends talaga on the target audience. Okay. So we're down to the last two questions. Communication gap also shows up when the leaders are too busy trying to deliver outputs and is too busy to parse anything else. Have you seen this in orgs? Oh my God, this happens all the time. I see this everywhere. So go ahead, Rad.
So yes, this is the case also. Even us, in my current role, I oftentimes become way too busy to communicate properly. So I am guilty of this also. There are times then we cannot parse it simply because we don't have the time, or maybe we assume that the people understand what we're talking about already. So I'm not saying that it's justified, pero it does happen most often than not.
Totoo. Okay, so any follow-up question with regards to that question? Is that enough? Guys, yun lang ba talaga yung tanong doon? Have you seen? Just seeing?
Can I add to that?
Elaborate?
So, yeah. Kung if seeing it, yes. But I think there are variations to this kasi. So, meron kasing mga wait. I don't want to label them leaders. May mga certain higher ups na there are certain reasons why they can't, and they won't communicate to the tawag doon, to the lower management.
Downlines.
Yeah, downlines. So one is I think yung rin kasi because they're merong certain concept ng yung mga higher management, they are the ones who actually think on how to make value. So in a sense sila yung nagiging product owner. They want to maximize yung value, ganun ganyan. And meron din part na parang sa kanila ideation and conception ng mga ideas. So that's one part na kaya hindi sila ganun ka I mean they don't bother communicating minsan. Tapos meron din naman na yun nga yung sobrang busy because they're doing may talagang trabaho sila. They do have other jobs. For example, yung what Rad said na they're doing some functional work, etc. But yeah, I think this boils down to the self-management and self uh, organization of the teams and the management. So if they are allowed yun nga yung enough leeway to work within themselves to organize and to manage what they work with. So I think this won't be that much of an issue if yun nga if they are if they are given that privilege to self-organize and self-manage. But yeah, that's my mostly idealistic insight on this one.
Cool. Thank you, Gra. Okay. We're down to the last question, Rad. How does theory X versus theory Y behaviors manifest with attempting to empower and trust the teams?
So depends. What's theory X and theory Y?
Sino nagtanong ulit nito?
Sino? Umami na.
So there's a lot, no? Pwedeng theory X and theory Y might be good or bad behaviors. No? Kaya medyo open yung question. Are we gonna lean on the negative or?
Sorry, I was eating.
Can you elaborate?
Okay.
Sino daw?
That's mine.
Okay.
Oh.
Sa sa School of Management na yep, gets ko na. Okay. So theory X and theory Y. So Richard shared it, no? So thank you. So this happens a lot in terms of paano ayaw mag-name drop. Pero it happens a lot when you are working with a lot of people who are competitive, no, in such a way na it actually affects the team. So say for example, I'm working with a certain person, no? So let's say I'm Y and said person is X. When I'm supposed to be doing the work, somehow si X becomes a blocker for some reason, maybe intentional or maybe yun talaga yung nature niya. I'm not sure. Pero it does affect it. Siguro in a general answer, it does affect it. In a more negative light than a positive one. Again, this is not objective, based on experience only. I'm not sure. Kasi ang hirap ang hirap mag-explain without the right context. Pero,
Mhm,
yun na
mhm.
lang. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay. Ano, Richard? Okay ka ba sa sagot ni Rad?
Always.
Wow.
Wow, very supportive. Okay. Thank you very much, guys. That was a lot of questions, no? And I'm happy that we were able to capture and answer everything. Sige. Meron ako share sa inyo for our next speaker sa June. Let me share my screen for a bit. Hindi ko na kasi nagawa hindi ko natapos yung slide niya. But I would like to, wala rin siya dito actually kasi may date siya tonight. But let me introduce to you virtually the next speaker. His name is Arnold. Can you see my screen na, guys? Can you see the LinkedIn?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So, si Arnold, he's a Filipino-Australian. I met him like 2 years ago in a meetup sa Credit Suisse na meetup 2019. So, I'm working with him in Standard Chartered Bank right now. He's one of the senior agile coaches there. He joined Standard Chartered Bank last year pa. So, he's been with the bank for almost a year na rin. And Arnold actually has been a good contributor to the Agile foundation of Standard Chartered Bank. So I invited him to be our next speaker. Kaya lang, he wants the topic to come from us. Kaya magkaroon tayo ng poll question on what would be the next topic would you want guys to be discussed in our meetup. So si Arnold, he's a Filipino, pero he was born in Australia and he used to work in Hong Kong and now he's in Singapore. He actually also has his startup before, kaya lang may some mishaps dun sa startup niya. So he went back to working and now he's been with Standard Chartered Bank. So I invited him to be our next speaker. Ayun, so let's go back to the slide though. I'll stop sharing my screen so that we can think of the next topic that you guys would want to discuss sa next month. Hindi ko pa actually na-fix yung date, but if you are interested to come up with a topic, you can freely type in dito sa Slido. Ayan, sa polls. What would you like as the topic for our meetup? Ayan. So I'll give you 5 minutes to think about it para meron tayong next topic para sa next meetup. Okay?
Where's the Slido link again? Sorry.
Teka. Try kong i-recopy paste dito sa chat natin. Oh, there you go. Andiyan na pala.
Yun. Thank
Yep.
you.
I think it was Johnny who pasted. Thank you, Johnny. He's the YouTube stream.
So I left my response there. I'm not sure if my name appeared. Or
I
did it
see
appear
2
na
people right now.
anonymous?
You can actually click on the anonymous and type in your name if you would want to. Wala namang problema.
Edit my profile, no? Okay.
Ano ba magandang topic next time? Anything, guys? Think of pressing bugging questions you have in mind.
So Arnold is a familiar name sa sa Agile community, at least sa APANZ area, no?
Yep.
I think I saw one of his talks about beyond budgeting, yung kina Evan Labon. This was 2 years ago.
Yes, tama.
Oo. So it would be interesting to see beyond budgeting and beta codex from his perspective. At least for me, kasi
Oo.
parang nandun
Sige,
yung-
type mo dyan para ma-record natin.
I typed it in.
Okay.
I was thinking kanina kung saan ko narinig yung Navy.
Okay. Ayan. Bakit sa akin late lumabas? Dito sa Zoom screen mabilis. Okay, 2 more minutes for others to make pahabol. Challenges in cascading agile mindset in different cultures. Becoming agile without framework bias. Interesting. Coaching unaware, unable, and unwilling people. This is a tough question.
Title ng book yan.
Talaga?
Hindi man yan exactly. There's a book that's similarly titled to that. That Brent has, I think, or Brent had shared.
Sige, ako naman, iniisip ko, sharing, parang, as if Arnold had read a specific agile book, can he make kwento of that book?
Tapos yung book, test-driven development.
Ha? Naku, padugo yun, wag yun. Pero, sige, tatype ko dyan. Teka lang. Any agile book you read and interesting to make a storytelling? Ayan. Okay. Sige. 40 seconds left. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Johnny, can we make a vote dito sa Slido? Hindi ako familiar sa Slido eh. How do we make a vote? Saan ba yun? Pwede mag-vote. Sa mural. Sa mural kasi we can do voting eh. Anyway, teka, let me ask Johnny if we can make a vote dun sa mga question. Okay. Can we vote on the questions? Give me a second while Johnny is replying to my question. Oh, okay. He's going to set it up. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is to vote on which topic would be the next for Arnold to discuss. Kasi I think Arnold naman can discuss any topic. Eh. He's a well-seasoned Agile coach, I believe. And he has a pretty bunch of experience as well in the startup community na din. So I think it would be good for me to introduce him to the local community. And he was happy actually when I asked him. And he said, yeah, Aucyn, I would love to meet the Agile Philippine community. Kasi nga, he never had a chance to get involved in any of our local meetups. Kaya nagulat siya when I told him, we have 2 Agile meetups in the Philippines. Sabi niya, really? So how do you guys connect? Sabi ko, we do the virtual meetup. That's why I thought of inviting him. to be the next speaker. While waiting for the setup, thank you, Rad. Guys, let's give Rad naman a round of applause for his very insightful topic tonight. And I actually learned a lot from you, Rad. Thank you. So I appreciate that Rad actually prompted me to revive the Agile Leaders PH meetup. Kasi nga, busy kami talaga guys dito sa SG. Puro trabaho lang kami dito. Since hindi kami nakakauwi, ayun, mahirap. Hindi rin kami nakaka-attend usually ng mga meetups recently kasi nga sobrang tightly coupled kami sa mga deliverables. But good. Okay, I think we can vote in a bit. Okay, so pupunta tayo dun sa Slido link. Wait lang. Rank topics in order of preference. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna do ranking of these questions probably for 2 minutes, guys. I'll time box for 2 minutes. So you rank, ano yung sa palagay ninyo would be your most interesting questions or topic. Sige, I'll set the timer for 2 minutes and it starts now. Okay, so make sure you go to the poll site. Okay, let me vote then. Teka.
Wait, saan yung link for that?
Yung link? Wait. Post ko dito sa chat. Ayan na, ang bilis talaga ni Johnny. It's like a flash. Thank you, Johnny. Sige, ako muna mag-vote din ako. Okay. 30 seconds left, guys. Interesting. Okay. Tapos na ba, everyone? Are you all done voting? Okay, we have a winning topic. Our next topic for the next meetup would be coaching and aware. Sabi mo nga, Rad, libro to, di ba? Coaching and aware, unable and unwilling people. So, mapo-force si Arnold magbasa kung di niya pa ito nababasa. No? So, I would tell him to read this book. So, he has a month to prepare and share with us what this book is all about. Pero syempre, of course, ang pinaka-importante dyan is to share insights and experience among katulad natin, agile practitioners. And of course, ang main goal natin is to be enlightened. Ako, lagi kong problema yan. So, may mga technique din ako actually sa mga coaching para sa mga matitigas ang ulo, egoistic, yung mga managers na mahirap kausap. May technique din ako dyan. But I guess that book would be worthwhile to share with everyone kasi hindi ko pa rin nababasa yung book na yan. Okay, so any more question, guys? Thank you so much for the very interactive participation on our first virtual meetup. If you have questions, suggestions, or recommendations for the next topics, feel free to ping me sa LinkedIn, sa Facebook. Makikita niyo ako everywhere. Okay? And you can also email me at aucyn@chameleon.io. All right. So, Rad, Rad, saan ka na?
Yes.
Hindi ko
I'm
maklik.
still here.
And any words for our newcomers dito sa Agile Meetup?
So keep on doing what you're doing best. You know? Agile is always there. The manifesto folks just gave it a name, so it's always a good practice to follow. So regardless whatever form or name Agile takes up or takes on, eventually you'll find yourself in a management position maybe. So I hope this talk helped you in your journey, and thank you for attending.
Yes. Thank you, Rad. Thank you, Johnny, our behind the scene setup guy. Thank you, Johnny. Hindi ako familiar kasi masyado sa Zoom. Skype tsaka Teams kasi ang gamit ko sa work. So I'm having trouble getting familiarized with all these configurations in Zoom. But I agree. We'll do a practice next time with Arnold para di tayo pa-delay dito sa configuration. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you for your time and attention. We hope to see you again on our next meetup. So please stay safe and well, everyone. Good night.
Stay safe. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Johnny.